What is up, and welcome everybody to my first ever set review for Magic the Gathering. Today we are going to cover Duskmourn. Specifically, this video, we're going to cover the white set. So we're going to cover all the commons, uncommons, rares, and mythics in the white color. And this is the first video in a series of videos that I'll be doing where I'm going to cover each set. We're going to cover each of the colors, colorless, multicolor, and then even do a little special video around the lands. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it and go through this new set and see what we think. So first up is the commons in white. I do have these ordered as well in ascending order based off of cost. So the first one we have here is Jump Scare. It's an instant, one white. Till end of turn, target creature gets +2/+2, gains flying, and becomes a horror enchantment creature in addition to its other types. So based on some of the stuff I already know about the set, making things enchantments, I think, is going to be really interesting mechanic because there's a lot of cards that affect enchantments. So for it to get +2/+2, flying, and becomes a horror enchantment, even though it's until end of turn, one cost, I think is pretty powerful. So we're probably going to see some good interplay with that, with limited formats. Maybe some enchantment decks can do some tomfoolery with it. But Jump Scare is a nice, interesting one. Also, might allow them to get over the line of defensive creatures, or put a big, heavy threat in the air that they're going to have to deal with that +2/+2 for one. Next up is Possessed Goat. So Possessed Goat, one white. It's pay 3, discard a card, put 3 1/1 counters on Possessed Goat, and it becomes a black demon in addition to its other colors and types. Activate only once. So one thing I really like about this is, so they're treating like the whole Satan. So one thing I like this set in general because it's a bunch of like the 80s movie tropes that I'm a big fan of. I grew up in the 80s. I like horror films, so I'll probably be putting some commentary in around the theme of this deck as we go through. But you have to sacrifice something to it because it's Satan, right? You got to sacrifice something to it so you can discard a card. You pay 3 and put 3 1/1 counters on this card. So essentially for 4 mana, you get a 4/4. But it's something that can scale with time. So maybe you put this down for a 1-drop. And then by turn 3, then you can make it a 4/4. So essentially it is shortcutting one turn because generally a 4-drop for 4/4 is something that you would see on turn 4 for 4 mana. Where with this, you're doing this on turn 3. And then if you have another card, maybe like Jump Scare, you could do some really interesting things with it and make it nice and big very quickly. So Possessed Goat is definitely an interesting card, something that I want to keep an eye on. It helps your curve. I think it'll see some good limited play as well. So I'm liking that card. Plus, I like the whole, you have to sacrifice something to it. This is our first introduction to the survival mechanic. I don't know. So I'm not a Magic the Gathering history nerd, so I don't know if there was a similar mechanic or a survival as a returning mechanic. Probably something I can look up at a later time. But this is the first time we are seeing it now in this set. But it is 2 CMC, so 1 colorless, 1 white, has survival. So at the beginning of your second main phase, if Acrobatic Cheerleader is tapped, put a flying counter on it. This ability triggers only once. So the nice thing is it is a flying counter. So if you can put it down on the board, attack with it, and then in the second main, if it's tapped, then it gets a flying counter. So in subsequent turns, it is now a flying. Creature. So a 2/2 for 2 that could potentially be a flyer is really nice. Again, you can buff that up. Now you have a flyer to deal with for 2. But we'll see more of this survival mechanic in how it's going to play out. Next up is Fear of Surveillance. So some of this art is really cool. So some of it's like really high fidelity, really cool art, and then some of it is like a fever dream, like this Fear of Surveillance. Two CMC, so one colorless, one white, has vigilance. And whenever fear of surveillance attacks, surveil one, and it's a 2/2. So this does help you recur things into the graveyard. So we might see this with some graveyard mechanics standard decks. Being able to look at a card, shove it into the graveyard. So maybe like a white-black deck. We might see some shenanigans with this. In a limited format, I'm not too sure about the graveyard recursion in the set, but having a way to reliably put something into the graveyard with Surveil. But a 2/2 for 2 that has vigilance is not bad. It's decent value. So it's a card that you could snag in a sealed or a limited format like draft and play to curve and have a decent 2-drop on the board. Next up, Cult Healer, 3 CMC, so 2 colorless and a white, 3/3. So a standard value, average value card there. And it has Eerie. Now, this is another new mechanic that we're seeing for the first time in these card reviews. And then it's whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, Cult Healer gains lifelink until end of turn. So this whole Eerie function is all about whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room. So rooms are a really interesting thing that's been added to this set. We'll talk more about it when we see a room here. But there are some mechanics to be able to like open and shut doors to rooms. So being able to turn on lifelink for this card or being able to play an enchantment. So again, we talked about enchantments being interesting. Then giving that lifelink for a turn. So it's a conditional keyword, but it is a keyword that can be added to this card for 3. So maybe a decent card to play on curve. Next up, we have Hardened Escort, 3 CMC, so 2 colorless and 1 white for a 2/4. So a good average value again for 3 cost. And then whenever Hardened Escort attacks, another target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Now, this can be really interesting. So say you put this up into the air, and now it's safely getting over the front line of your opponent, and this then gives another card that might be on the ground indestructible. Next up is Living Phone. So 3 CMC again, and 2 colorless, 1 white, and for a 2/1, so kind of expensive for the stats alone. But it is an artifact creature toy. So the fact that it's an artifact creature might play into some things here. When Living Phone dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 2 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So white-red is going to be all about little creatures going wide. So this could be some good way to get some more cards into your hand and start playing a nice wide board. So a little bit expensive on the expensive side at 3 mana for a 2/1. Kind of easy to just ping and get off the board. But it is a way to generate more card draw. Gotta close all these extra windows I have so we're not getting notifications. Next up, Trapped in the Screen. 3 mana or 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 white. It's an enchantment. It has Ward 2, so a little bit of protection there. And when Trapped in the Screen enters, exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment, and opponent controls until Trapped in the Screen leaves the battlefield. So this is what is that? It's like a Banishing Light, except has Ward on it. So Banishing Light from Bloomburrow. There was the other. I can't think of the name of the card, but there's another white card that you see in the domain decks that will trap a card as well. But the fact that this has Ward on it, this seems really, really powerful. So a Ward 2 for 3, and I get to trap a creature. I like it. Plus, I also like this old like poltergeisty art on there. Next up is Friendly Ghost. So Friendly Ghost is a 4 CMC, so 3 colorless, 1 white. It's a creature spirit for 2 that has a 2 power, 4 toughness, flying, and then when friendly ghost enters, target creature gets +2/+4 until end of turn. So essentially, it does translate into a 4/8, but for only a single turn. It is a 2/4 block, flying body in the air. It's kind of expensive, but it does have a nice little combat trick with it that might buff something to, power through a front line or something like that. I think it's a little expensive. It might be hard to grab in a limited format at 4 CMC, but we don't quite know the speed of the format yet. Taking a look, so I've read through a lot of these cards ahead of time. My initial guess is that this format is going to be slower than Bloomburrow. Now, this is before all of the mechanics have been explored and everybody's kind of come up with all these synergies and stuff. So maybe there's really quick ways to win games, but kind of looking at the general mana curve and like where the better cards are, I think it's going to be a little bit slower. Next up is Unsettling Twins. 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 white for 2/2. So that's kind of expensive right off the bat. Creature, human, but its ability is when it Unsettling Twins enters, Manifest Dread. So this is the first time we are seeing the Manifest Dread mechanic in our review of the set. And Manifest Dread is look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other into your graveyard. Turn it face up at any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card. So it does get you another card onto the battlefield if it's a creature. Well, it gets you another card onto the battlefield regardless. But if it's a creature, you can then turn it over for its cost. So this Manifest Dread mechanic is an interesting one. There's been different face-down mechanics in the game. Again, I don't know if this is... I'm not a Magic the Gathering historian. I am a relatively new player into the competitive scene and taking Magic seriously and studying sets and understanding them. So I don't know if Manifest Dread is a new mechanic in general or if it's something that's come about again. But this you'll see this a lot, this ability to look at the top 2 cards, put one of them face down, and make it a 2/2 creature. So this may or may not be a good card for the cost, depending on maybe you can make Manifest Dread decks or things like that. But I do enjoy the old Shining reference here, the creepy twins at the end of the hallway. Now this one, the art's just weird. She's way too happy to be breaking out of a cocoon. I guess you would be happy that you're breaking out of a cocoon, but this is a bit manic. So Emerge from the Cocoon is a 5 CMC, so 4 colorless, 1 white sorcery, and it's return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain 3 life. That seems pretty expensive. I don't have a lot of comparison. I know there's a lot of cards that can pull cards out of the graveyard, but for 5 mana, it seems a little expensive. It might work with a mechanic that you're, pumping things into the graveyard and you need ways to pull them out. So it might be too expensive for limited. It might work into some other formats. Next up, we have Fear of Immobility. Now, as an aside, I told you we're going to be talking about some of the art and some of this creepy stuff. That it has a name, but the actual fear. But I've had this before where my mind was awake and I was aware of my surroundings, but I couldn't move. Like some people say it's like a demon is sitting on them. They don't feel in control of their body. But I've had that where you've like woken up and you're conscious in your mind, but you can't like open your eyes. You can't move your body. So that's been a creepy feeling. So the fear of immobility. And this is one of, again, those like high fidelity, creepy arts that almost like jumps out at you. But let's read what this one's about. So it's a 5 CMC, 4/4 enchantment creature nightmare. When Fear of Mobility enters, tap up to 2 or up to 1 target creature. If an opponent controls that creature, put a stun counter on it. So it's a 5-drop for 4/4, which is a little expensive, but it does immobilize an opponent's card for 2 turns. So it takes it out for 2 turns. So it does have some interaction on the board. Again, 5 cost seems a little high for that ability, but maybe you pair that with another card that allows you to, exile or destroy a tapped card. Also, being able to tap your own cards for some reason might play into this as well. So we'll see how this plays out. In my opinion, I think that's a little expensive. All righty. So we have got to our first room in this set review. We're starting with white. So if you're catching the white video, this is the first video in the series. So we're going to talk a lot about firsts with the white set here. So nice thing about Scryfall is I can hover over it and it makes it a little bit bigger. So this is Grand Entryway and Elegant Rotunda. Grand Entryway can be played for 2 CMC, so 1 colorless or 1 white. And Elegant Rotunda can be played for 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 white. It's an enchantment and it's a room. And so the way rooms work is you may cast either half. That door unlocks on the battlefield as a sorcery. You may pay the mana cost of a locked door to unlock it. So when this is in your hand, it essentially is 2 cards in your hand. You can pay either side to put it onto the board, and then you can pay the cost to open the other side. So we've already encountered a card that said if an enchantment enters or you unlock a room. So there's going to be a lot of enchantment interplay, in locking and unlocking room interplay that we're going to see. And so let's check this out, see what it does. So Grand Entryway for the 2 CMC is when you unlock this door, create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment token. Cool. And then on the other side, Elegant Rotunda is when you unlock this door, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So a nice little buff for you. It is cast at sorcery speed, so it's not really a combat trick, but it is a nice little way to buff the board that you're in. See, I thought I closed Steam. Exit Steam. Okay. So I think the rooms are going to be really interesting in mechanic. We see quite a few of them. We also see these glimmer tokens come up from time to time. They're just a 1/1 enchantment creature. So that I do like how I can just kind of hover over this and show you what the token looks like. So one of my favorite things to do in drafts is the collection of tokens during in-person drafts. I like to have a whole set of the tokens. So whatever I draft, I can just, pull out a real token. So be on the lookout for rooms. Overall, this one I think is interesting. 2 CMC for a token, kind of expensive, but it's a room. So if you're looking for interplay with enchantments or rooms, it's a cheapish way to get one down on the battlefield, and then buffing some creatures for 3 once it's down there. So it's a way to spend your mana. Next up is Seized from Slumber. 5 CMC, 4 colorless, 1 white. It's an instant. This spell costs 3 less to cast. If it targets a tapped creature, destroy target creature. We just talked about that. We talked about fear of immobility, right? This comes down as a 4/4 for 5. It taps a creature, it stuns it, and then I can play this for 2 and destroy that creature. It's a little expensive. That's 7 mana to destroy a creature and then put a board. But I guess if they had a massive creature out there, just tapping it and being able to destroy it is really interesting. So kind of expensive, but it can be kind of cheap as well. So it could be just 2 mana to destroy a tapped creature. This also applies, obviously, if they attacked you or tapped it for something. And then you can go ahead and destroy it for 2. So decent removal on tapped creatures, very expensive on non-tapped creatures. Next up, we have for 6 CMC, the Shepherding Spirits. It's a 4/5 creature spirit, flying with plane cycling 2. So you can pay 2, discard this card. Search your library for a plains card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So has a nice little plains cycling opportunity here. So it is card find if you need it. It's a decent sized body, 4/5 for 6. With flying is kind of expensive. And I would say if, I was trying to like come up with a scale on the fly. Generally, the best way to think about it, like a 6/6 for 6 would be like a nice average price to pay for a card. It's not good. It's not bad. It's okay. It's not terrible. So anything that's less than the CMC in power and toughness, you really need to start making up for in the body of the card. So things like keywords. Well, it's got one keyword. It's got flying. And it's got plane cycling, so it can help you find a card. But in general, as a creature, it's pretty expensive to play. So that finishes the common cards. Next up, we're going to take a look at the uncommon cards in white. So again, this will be in ascending order of CMC cost. So first up, we're going to have one CMC, so one white is Ethereal Armor. It's an enchantment aura. So all you aura fans out there, I got a couple buddies that really like to make aura commander decks. So this might go really well into that deck. You can enchant a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. So this is really good in aura decks. I've seen some of my commander folks out there build those enchantment/aura decks where you're looking to be able to attach things to your creatures, Tron your creatures, and give it additional ability. So first strike and +1/+1. So you have a handful of enchantments down, and give something first strike. So again, keep tabs on the number of enchantments that we see and enchantment creatures, and remember, rooms count as enchantments. And so being able to slap this onto a creature, say you even have 2 or 3 enchantments, or even one, it counts itself, you're going to give something +1/+1 and first strike for 1. So I think this is a decent little trick that you could pull in a limited format. Assuming you can kind of build around some enchantments, this could be really good. But in general, this would definitely go well in some commander decks, in my opinion. Next up, for one CMC, one white is Optimistic Scavenger. It is a 1/1 creature human scout. It has Eerie, so that's the Eerie mechanic coming back again. It says, whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So this is nice to put down on the board. It's a nice 1/1 for 1 drop. And then if you have enchantments again, now, or rooms, now we're able to start adding counters. So even these 2 cards working together, things are going to get nasty real quick. They're going to get big fast. Next up is Shard Mage's Rescue for 1 CMC. So it's 1 white. It's another enchantment aura flash. So nice way to be able to combat trick that in. Enchant creature you control. As long as Shard Mage's Rescue entered this turn, enchanted creature has hexproof. So nice 1 mana protection. So somebody tries to destroy your card, I can go ahead and Shard Mage, protect that card. And it's an enchantment, so it's adding to the enchantment count. And then enchanted creature gets +1/+1. So this card in general, I really like. I really like it. Does a lot of things. I like the combat tricks, protects a card, gives it 1/1, and provides a lot of synergy with sort of an enchantment focused deck. Unwanted Remake for 1 CMC or 1 white is an instant, and it's destroy target creature its controller manifest dread. So this is a nice cheap removal. However, it does give it manifest dread, so it gives them the ability to look at top 2 cards of their deck, pick one of those cards, put it face down, and make it a 2/2 creature. So you're basically destroying a creature to give them a 2/2 creature and potentially some card draw, essentially, and a selection of another creature out of their deck. So it is a good balance for the 1 cost. It's like a risk-reward type of thing, because they could draw 2 lands. And then you just destroyed a 7/7 creature and gave them a 2/2 with nothing. So it could have been a 7/7 with flying and first strike and lifelink and just trying to destroy your world, you cut it down and give it a 2/2 with nothing, right? So I think it's a good mix there. And also this art, it's creepy. It's got a bunch of moths like eating this dude. You can even see here a little bit. You can see my mouse. It's like eating a hole in his face. I'm gonna really enjoy this sort of like creepy, dark, gory set, in my opinion. This one, I love the art. This is like the bomb going off behind you art. You know, the old movie trope, like it's behind you, like just blowing up, and you're the cool guy walking out of the room. 1 CMC, veteran survivor, creature, human survivor. It's a 2/1. So a 2/1 for 1, that's good, right? We said 1, like a 1 mana for 1/1. That's like standard. So we're getting a 2/1 for 1. Good body. It can block a 2/2, can block a 3/2. That's on the board. So it's got some good blocking capabilities with that 2 power. It's got survival, so we saw that mechanic already. It's at the beginning of your second main phase. If veteran survivor is tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. So I can exile a card from a graveyard as long as it survived the attack phase and moved into my second main. And as long as there are 3 or more cards with exiled with veteran survivor, it gets +3/+3 and has hexproof. So this is really interesting because it's not 3 or more cards exiled just in general. It's exiled with veteran survivor. So when you're exiling a card with veteran survivor, you're going to have to make sure to keep like a pile separately or some sort of count as to how many cards it's exiled, because then it gets +3/+3 and has hexproof. So this thing is going to have to survive 3 turns at 1 toughness. So one thing that you could really do is start looking at the other cards that, like the auras and the enchantments, that can buff this and give it some toughness to survive. Maybe some combat tricks to give it hexproof so people can't destroy it, to really be able to take advantage of the fact that it's going to get its own hexproof plus a +3/+3. So this thing could be super spicy. I do like it for limited, especially if you can grab some enchantments and some ways to protect it. This could be a nice spicy card, but again, it's going to fit. It's going to fit in, I think, an enchantment deck just really well. It's going to be a card that you want to buff and put auras on. So it's going to be the centerpiece to your Tron. Exercise, 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 white. It's a sorcery, and I can exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. 2 cost removal. Does have to be 4 or greater, which I think is a good balance for the fact that it's 2 cost. But it is a little limiting. I might snag this. This wouldn't be a high choice in a limited format for me. If I'm maybe getting into, you know, greater than pick 7, pick 8 into a pack, and I'm pretty firmly in white, and I'm not seeing a lot of good synergy cards, this would be a removal that I would potentially take just to get rid of any big bombs that are on the board. This one is funny. I saw this one earlier. I love the title of this. If you're catching this in the YouTube video, put the timestamp on this. We're 28 minutes in, 28.5 minutes in. And this is Orphans of the Wheat. Tell me what movie this is obviously parodying. I'll give you 5 seconds. I don't know why I counted down that way. Obviously Children of the Corn, right? Orphans of the Wheat. They're like, all right, we want to make a Children of the Corn card, but we can't say Children of the Corn because it's trademarked. What is something else that we can say? Orphans of the Wheat. It is a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 white creature, human, 2/1. So it's kind of on the expensive side. We would want that to be more like a 2/2 to be like an average cost, but let's see what it does. It says, whenever Orphans of the Wheat attacks, tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Orphans of the Wheat gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature tapped this way. That is OP. So, like I said, white and red are really looking to go wide, create a bunch of tokens. Does it say non-token creatures? No, it just says untapped creatures. So you can make a bunch of token creatures, tap with those, and then all of a sudden this thing is a 10/10 coming at you. That's nuts. Or 1110 coming at you. So I definitely would say if you're going wide in limited, you're generating a lot of tokens, you're generating a lot of creatures, Orphans of the Wheat is a nice grab. I would definitely grab that one. Sheltered by Ghosts. This one's interesting. There's a lot of like Ghostbusters undertones in some of these ghost cards. And this was what it kind of reminds me with like the gear that the character is wearing. But Sheltered by Ghosts is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 white. It's an enchantment aura. So again, more enchantments. Enchant creature you control. When Sheltered by Ghosts enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. So basically, you slap this onto a creature, hopefully a body that you can protect. This will give it ward 2. Plus, if you give it like hexproof from something, or you have a way to protect it, then this is a good way to pull a card off of the battlefield and just sit there. So it is a 2 mana sort of removal card. There's a lot of things you have to do to protect it. So it might be a little too layered, if you will, to be of high value, but it might be decent removal for you. Plus, it's another enchantment. So if you are running an enchantment deck, it's enchantment removal. So definitely something you could go for. Next up is the Split Skin Doll. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 white. For 2/1, it is an artifact creature toy. And when Split Skin Doll enters, draw a card, then discard a card unless you control another creature with power 2 or less. So again, going wide with white and red, this is going to fit really well into this. So it is potentially a card draw for you, as long as you don't have anything with power 2. Then discard a card unless you control. So you do need a card with 2 or less on the board to not dislocate or discard a card. So you get a card down on turn 1. It's a 1/1 or 2/1. And then play this turn 2. You get some card draw. It's another 2/1. It does have some decent block. So it is okay value. I would say it's a little bit better than average as far as value goes. Also, I love the creepy doll stuff. There was what was the horror movie? Puppet Master. Oh, I watched like a few of those Puppet Master movies. And so like all the dolls are always super, super creepy. So here's another one of those sort of like Ghostbuster undertone, Ghost Hunter undertone cards that we see is Glimmer Seeker. So it's a 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 white for 3/3. So nice average cost. We're starting off a good foundation. It's a creature human survivor. It has survival. So at the beginning of your second main phase, if Glimmer Seeker is tapped, draw a card if you control a Glimmer creature. So we talked about those Glimmer tokens that we see here. If you don't control a Glimmer creature, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. So these are also enchantment. That's something I didn't point out, is that these are also an enchantment. So this will go towards your enchantment account. So white enchantments, I think, is going to be definitely something that you're going to be drafting in limited. So basically, if you don't already have a Glimmer out, this will give you a Glimmer, and then every time you attack with it, you get to draw a card. So it is good card draw. Good base value. Essentially, it is a 4/4 because it is giving you a 1/1. Plus, it's giving you an enchantment, which might play well into a synergy. So I would say this is above average value. This is definitely something that's let's say if an average value is C, this would definitely be like a B+ in value. There, I came up with a scale for us. Patched Plaything. Oh, isn't that creepy? Ugh. You got the bloody teeth, and then you got like a baby doll face. Yep, that's creepy. That's officially creepy. This one's cool. This one's just like a high fidelity. Like, I like the way they pop the colors. This one, creepy. 3 CMC, Patched Plaything, 2 colorless, 1 white. It's a 4/3, so already starting off at a good C value average, or average value. It's an artifact creature toy. So a couple things. We know toys are going to be something, and we know artifacts are going to be something. But it has double strike. And then Patch Plaything enters with 2 -1/-1 counters on it if you cast it from your hand. Ouch. So this actually comes out as like a 2/1 with double strike, unless you have a way to pull it out of your graveyard. So we've already seen one way to pull something out of a graveyard, or to maybe, you know where this would actually be really interesting is in Manifest Red. So say you pull this off the top of your deck, you Manifest Red, and then you can pay the 3 to flip it, and it's a 4/3 with double strike. So that might be a good card to Manifest Red for sure. So if you have ways to Manifest Red, like I said, this could be something again where maybe you buff it with enchantment auras, make it big, and then the fact that it has a keyword of double strike, and then you add some other keywords with some enchantment auras, then this could be really interesting. But overall, just face value, I would say it's a below average card unless you have some interaction with it. So overall, I'd probably give this like well, for 3 mana, 2/1, double strike, maybe like a C-, slightly above or slightly below average. Next up for 4 CMC is Savior of the Small. It is a 3/4, little low on the value scale here. It's a creature core survivor. Again, Ghostbustery type theme going on here. It has survival. And at the beginning of your second main phase, if Savior of the Small is tapped, return target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand. So it does give you some graveyard recursion into your hand, not to the battlefield. So be a good way to like save some cards. Again, if I was drafting or doing something limited, if I needed some synergy to keep certain cards alive or bring them back, then this might be a good way. Just like a face value average card. I would say its benefit does require some synergy, so I would just going to put this as like an average value card right off the bat, just because of the 3/4. You would really want that to be like a 4/4 for 4, and then it would just be a solid C. So this detriment of only 3 attack with 4 defense does give you some graveyard recursion. So if you are looking for that synergy, the value of it does definitely come up, to like a B-. If you need some ways to pull something out of a graveyard, it's a good card to do so. But if you're just looking for a body, it's a C- for me. Next up is Lionheart Glimmer for 5 CMC, so 3 colorless, 2 white. It's an enchantment creature, cat glimmer. So it is a glimmer, so that's going to go towards that glimmer count that we needed. It's also an enchantment, so it's going to go well with any enchantment decks that we might be doing. It's got Ward 2. Let's go back. 5 CMC for a 2/5. So already, like average would be 5/5. That's way down. If we're looking at it just as a body, we're down here in like the D+ territory as a 2/5. But it has Ward 2, bringing us up maybe to like a C-. And then whenever you attack, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So this might be something where you throw it down as a body right before you do a big attack, and then all of those creatures are going to get +1/+1. So this could essentially translate to a very good board state effector. And those go wide decks. I would take maybe one of these in draft if I'm going nice and wide and I need a way to like buff the board. The Ward 2 is nice. It does protect it a little bit, so somebody isn't just like, you slam this down and go to swing with everything, and then they're just destroying it before you can move to your attack phase. So it does have some way to protect itself. Next up, for 6 CMC, is Fear of Abduction. It is a 5/5, so a little low on the value scale here. It's an enchantment creature nightmare. As an additional cost to cast a spell, exile a creature you control. So there goes the abduction. Now this could be just a token. All right, so we can just be getting rid of a little token guy. It's a 5/5, so we got a keyword, so that might bring us back up here a little bit. 5/5 flying with a keyword. And then when Fear of Abduction enters, exile target creature an opponent controls. So it's removal. We're getting better. And then when Fear of Abduction leaves the battlefield, put each card exiled with it into its owner's hand. So it's exiled until it leaves, and then it puts that card back into your opponent's hand. So this thing does a lot of things. I think it's a little expensive, especially for a limited format. I think I heard somebody say that this would be good in like a vintage format. I've never played vintage, so I don't know. But they do like nice, powerful, synergistic cards, and this thing does a lot of things. So this could potentially be a good fit for a format like that. I think it would be kind of hard to draft. To draft in general. We don't know how fast this format's going to be, so maybe it's right in line. Maybe the average curve is somewhere around 4 or 5 for CMC. Next up is the Surgical Suite. We'll hover over this here. Try to get this text out of the way. The hover over text. The Surgical Suite and Hospital Room. So we got the nice. Well, actually, they didn't go. I thought they would go with like the creepy. Like a haunted hospital type art, but they went with sort of a like a Victorian home with a surgical suite, an amphitheater. It looks like, yeah, it's a surgical amphitheater, and then this like Victorian hospital room thing going on. But on the surgical suite side, 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 white. This will on that side, the surgical suite will. When you unlock this door, return target creature card with manual value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So then we're going back to that card that as long as you didn't pay for it or play it out of your hand and move it onto the battlefield. So this is nice, especially for cards like that have effects of if you didn't pay for it, it comes out as, what was that, a 4/3 for double strike, which would have been crazy, right? This does also add to your room count as well as your enchantment count. So nice kind of cheaper enchantment to get on the board and room to get on the board. On the other side of this card, you have Hospital Room. So it's 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 white. And then whenever you attack, put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature. So nice little way to just keep buffing. But what was that? Innkeeper's Inn? Or Innkeeper's Talent in Bloomburrow. I think that was only 2 CMC though, but then you had to unlock the various stages. So you could just slap this down for 4 and then all of a sudden just keep ticking up your guys every time they attack. So definitely an interesting one. Definitely plays into the enchantment and the go wide strategy here. I could see myself drafting this, especially if I have a card like Patched Plaything. That would be crazy. All right. We have finished the uncommons. Next up, we have the rares. So there's only 8 rares here. This is a 2 CMC, Reluctant Role Model. So again, I think this is sort of this Ghostbusters, Ghost Hunters sort of graphic. I really like some of these, like I said, are these like high fidelity, almost look like a picture taken, really good artwork, I think, from like a realism perspective, as much realist as you can be in a horror film. But then they got this like souped up hockey stick and they're ready to go. But this has the survival mechanic. So at the beginning of your second main phase, if Reluctant Role Model is tapped, put a flying lifelink or 1/1 counter on it. So this thing starts to get spicy really quick. If it can survive 3 turns, it's going to be flying lifelink and a 3/3 for 2. Now, every time after that, you just keep swinging, and every time you just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then whenever Reluctant Role Model or another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put those counters on up to 1 target creature. So it has the transitive property. so this dies. Say it had the flying, the lifelink, and that was it. I can just put that flying and lifelink onto something else, or all the 1/1 counters. So this is crazy. So you could just shift it all over. If you got this nice and buffed, and they finally removed it, you're just shifting all of that. So if I saw this, definitely would snag it in a draft. I think it would go well really in any white deck, go wide decks, enchantment decks. It's definitely an interesting card. Next up for 3 CMC, 1 colorless, 2 white, we have Enduring Innocence. It's a 2/1 lifelink. And whenever one or more other creatures you control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. And then whenever Enduring Innocence dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. So if it was a creature, return to the... It's not a creature. Oh, it's just an enchantment. It's not a creature when it returns to the battlefield. So it helps your enchantment count. It gives you card draw. So you basically keep this upper part. Whenever one or more other creatures you control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card. This ability triggers once each turn. So it does give you a card draw each turn. It does come out as a 2/1 creature, so it does have a body. And it's an enchantment creature to start. And then if it dies, it can return it to the battlefield under my control. And now it's just an enchantment. So it's just sitting off to the side, still giving me this card draw each turn if I play or just enters or less enters. So if a token enters the battlefield that's 2 or less, this would also trigger that. So interesting little card. It's not super powerful, but it has a lot of interplay. So again, in an enchantment deck, maybe you're doing an enchantment commander deck. Maybe you're trying to build an enchantment standard deck. This would definitely go really well in there. All right. Next up is Split Up. It's a 3 CMC, 1 colorless, 2 white, sorcery. And then you get to choose one, destroy all tapped creatures or destroy all untapped creatures. Nice little board wipe for 3. I would definitely snag this as removal in a draft or a limited format. I really like the art here. It's this crazy, I don't even know what style of art, but it is Ghostbustery. So you see this person on the left here with like the Ghostbuster gun. This person over here is fighting eyeballs. This one's getting their mind blown. I don't know what's going on there, but that guy does not look like they're having a good time. But nice little board wipe for 3. I would definitely snag that. This one was another funny one to me. Toby the Beastie Befriender is a 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 white, legendary creature, human wizard. And it's a 1/1. But when Toby the Beastie Befriender enters, create a 4/4 white beast creature token with this creature can't attack or block alone. So it's got to attack or block with someone. As long as you control 4 or more creature tokens you control have flying. So it would give everything flying as long as you have more. So again, if you're going wide, now all of a sudden all of your tokens have... this could be turn 3. You've already established... Maybe you've already established 3 tokens onto the board. More likely turn 4, but maybe on turn 3, you've had the ability to generate a couple tokens or 3 tokens. You play this on turn 3, giving it a 4th token. Now all of them have flying and are swinging in the air. And then we get the token itself. Look at this token. Let me move my head out of the way here. That's the 4/4. This creature can't attack or block alone. But at the 48 minute, 28 second mark in the video, tell me what show, movie this reminds you of. Again, we'll do a countdown. Obviously, Monsters Inc., right? Is this not Monsters Inc.? It's the little girl. I think they made... I can't tell if that's a little girl, little boy. But it was obviously the little girl is befriending the monster in Monster Inc. So I think, what was it, Sully? So Sully, Toby. But I forget what the little girl's name is in Monsters Inc. But the Toby is the little person here, befriending the monster. But it's a 1/1, so you're really playing it as essentially it's a 5/5 for 3 plus a buff for your tokens. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I would definitely snag it. Next up is Unidentified Hover Ship, 3 CMC, 1 colorless, 2 white. It's an artifact vehicle, 2/2 with flying. And then when Unidentified Hover Ship enters, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less. And then when unidentified hover chip leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner manifests dread. So it doesn't give them the card back, but it does allow them to manifest dread, which is, again, look at the top 2 cards of your library, pick one of them, put them down, and it becomes a 2/2 creature. And then it has only a crew 1 cost, so you can crew it with a token. Next up is Leyline of Hope. 4 CMC, 2 colorless, 2 white. We got this creepy hallway with like wardrobe or furniture all wrapped up here. Hopefully that's furniture. It's an enchantment, so it's going to help with the enchantment decks. And if this is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield like every other Leyline card out there. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1. As long as you have at least 7 or more, then you're starting a life total. Creatures you control get +2/+2. So if you're in a life gain deck, this could be a nice little addition there. I haven't seen a ton of life gain, though, in this one. Ghostly Dancers obviously reminds me of like the ghost ship trope. But 5 CMC, 3 colorless, 2 white. It's a 2/5 creature spirit with flying. And then when Ghostly Dancers enters, return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand or unlock a locked door of a room you control. So this could actually be a discount. Some of the rooms get really expensive, so being able to just put this down and unlock a door is pretty nice. But then this also has Eerie. So whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 3/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. So this would be here. Here's the Ghostly Spirit token 3/1. That's a nice little token there. This one would obviously go well in an enchantment deck again or a room deck. You put that in there. You're generating spirit tokens every time. It's got a flying 2/5, so it does have some evasion. Get it up off the ground. Unlocks a door for you. So it does a lot of things for what it does. So if you have some synergies that would go well, that you can take advantage of each of these things that it does, then I think it's a good value. Next up is we have another room. Let's hover over that, so make it as big as possible. This is Dazzling Theater and the Prop Room. For Dazzling Theater is a 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 white. Creature spells you cast have Convoke, so I can use other creatures to help cast the cost of that card. So that might help you with some of the expensive cards, especially if you're going wide. You'll be able to more easily slam down some of those bigger cards. And then for 3 CMC, we have Prop Room, 2 colorless, 1 white. And then it's untap each creature you control during each other player's untap step. So essentially giving all of your cards vigilance. So you tap them, attack, and then the moves to their turn, and then on their untap phase, all of your cards on top so they can defend again. So, but they still do tap. So if they have cards that like remove tap creatures, then they're still vulnerable there. But nice little enchantment. Can definitely do some work for you. I definitely think it will work well in those enchantment decks. So if I have a heavy enchantment deck, I would definitely snag something like this. And that completes the rares for white. So next up, and finally for white, we have the mythic rarity cards. This one is... Did we already see this one? Why is this one... We've already seen this one. Yeah, we've already seen the Enduring Innocence. It's a 2/1 lifelink. You get card draw and it dies and it comes back. Yeah, we saw that over here, didn't we? Enduring Innocence. Apparently this is a rare version, but there's a mythic version of this same card. Interesting. And then there's 2 rare versions. Oh, I don't know if I've seen that. I don't know what to think about that. So depending on the art, there's like a rare version. All right, we've already seen this card, so we're going to move on to the next one. First up for Mythic, we have... Well, first up for Mythic was this weird rare card that becomes Mythic, depending on the art, is the Wandering Rescuer. It's a 5 CMC, 3/4, legendary creature, human samurai noble. It's got Flash, so nice little combat trick there, and Convoke, so I can use creatures I have to help cast it. Double strike, so double strike also includes first strike, so flash that down as a defender, boom, you're getting that first strike damage in. And then other tapped creatures you control have hexproofs and it's protection. So you could tap a bunch of creatures, pay this, now they're all protected, and then defend with this. So this is a nice little sweet card to drop in here. Next up is for 7 CMC, 5 colorless, 2 white, is Overlord of the Mistmoors. It's an enchantment creature avatar horror for 6/6. It has impending 4, and you can pay the impending cost, which is 2 colorless, 2 white. If you cast a spell for its impending cost, it enters with 4 time counters on it and isn't a creature until the last is removed. At the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter from it. So basically, instead of paying the 7 CMC, you can pay this 4 CMC, which is 2 colors, 2 white. Put this down with 4 time counters on it, and at the beginning of my end step, I remove a counter, and then just keep removing a counter until there's no more counters, and then now the card is actually active on the battlefield. And then whenever Overlord of the Mistmoors enters or attacks, create 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying. Let's go look at these tokens. Of course, they went with creepy moths, but I guess this guy is like a mummy. Yeah, it's like a mummy, so I guess moths make sense in that particular case. Next up, we have Dollmaker's Shop and Porcelain Gallery. So I believe this was one of the preview cards, so people have had a chance to see this one. Dollmaker's Shop is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 white. It's obviously an enchantment room. And then whenever 1 or more non-toy creatures you control attack a player, create a 1/1 white toy artifact creature token. So as long as you're attacking with things that aren't toys, this will make more toys. And then on the other side of this card, we have a 6 CMC Porcelain Gallery. Creatures you control have base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. So as you go wide, all of these creatures just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is a nice slam, especially if you have another card to help open a door, maybe get a 2-for-1 essentially out of it, or the game lasts long enough for you to be able to pay this, and your board's nice and wide. It all of a sudden gets real spicy. So that completes our first ever card preview for Duskmourn. We covered white in the common, uncommon, rare, and mythic level. This was a first for me, and this is hopefully benefiting you as much as it is me in reviewing these cards. And we're going to go through every color in the set, including colorless and multicolor, and then even a special short video covering some of the new lands that are entering. So if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, leave a comment below. All of it's free, supports the YouTube algorithm, and helps out the channel a ton. And as I always like to say, until next time, we'll catch you at the table.